welcome to another episode of Our Own Devices. This time with us is Hendrik Witt, who is Chief Product Officer of a product I guess a lot of us are using for work and maybe for a little bit of other stuff, which is TeamViewer. Hendrik, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
And we are going to talk about a topic which we have touched quite a few times in its different aspects. Now, it's something that's intangible, but we have still, tried to look at the different aspects of it, and that's the metaverse. And Hendrik is going to tell us how the metaverse is sort of going to flow into the enterprise space, or how the enterprise space is sort of going to be subsumed by the metaverse. Uh, Before we start, Hendrik, I want to ask you, what is your take on the metaverse? What is your definition of the metaverse? Because even that, I guess, differs from person to person and company to company right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is usually the most asked question. What is actually this metaverse thing? And I think usually I go and start with actually the metaverse itself is nothing new, right? The terminology has been out there for quite some time. It goes back to one of the books that have been issued from the States. So typically what we see right now as metaverse is actually more what I would refer to as the consumer version of the metaverse, right? Which is more around, a fully virtual, fully digital world where things can happen, right? It's almost a parallel world to the reality, you could say. Where technology gets into play that is around virtual reality, for example, right? So there's lots and lots of things. So you can experience in the metaverse different spaces. You can shop around eventually. All these type of things, which are currently more, I would say, more in the consumer side of the world. However, for us at TeamViewer in particular, there is a different flavor to the metaverse. How I usually look at the metaverse, and that is what I refer to as the industrial metaverse, right? Which is actually the type of the metaverse that really matters to enterprises and businesses. So it's more the B2B version, you can say, and that is really where virtual world and reality get actually blended. So not really blocking out the reality completely, like it would be the case with virtual reality technology, but in the industrial metaverse, it's really all about, for example, things like you've probably heard of already, which is augmented reality, mixed reality type of technologies, right? Those are the cool things that make the industrial metaverse possible. So, and then that is actually where, when companies look at the metaverse and ask themselves, what's actually in for me in this metaverse thing, because obviously I'm not a consumer as an enterprise. I think the answer is there is an industrial version of the metaverse where there is super value in that space going into the future, and actually it is already existing today, and we might talk about that today.
No, so a lot of us are working virtually, right? And we have, as you know best, we are working with people spread all around the world. It is all virtual. Is that also in a way the start of the metaverse? Because yeah, of course, we are looking at something that's going to be a little bit more. Um, how do you put it? Something that's going to wrap around you. But this is also maybe the start of it, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could say so, right? Even those digital conferences that we're doing right now is some form of fashion. I would say people would not necessarily call it the metaverse, though, right? But there is technology out there that takes the traditional video conferencing tool to the next level, actually takes it 3D. So where you,
Yeah.
for example, can experience a collaborative environment that is not happening anymore in 2D. Think about, for example, people sitting in a meeting room, in a physical meeting room, and there are sitting avatars of other people in that same room. Even though those people might be miles away somewhere else, right? Those are the type of things where you see the traditional communication and even the remote tools, where those kind of already enter, let's say, the metaverse space. So that's actually a quite interesting space as well.
I heard this phrase of extended reality being used in this sense. And it was one of the larger Silicon Valley companies which told me about this phrase. And this is almost 18 months back when they said that, hey, we are working on extended reality. Is this almost the same, or where you're bringing an AR element, a mixed reality element into work.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say the extended reality is probably the better term to describe really what's happening in the industrial version of the metaverse,
Yeah.
because it's really kind of an extension of reality, right? And it usually comes to you, for example, with various different smart glasses, for example, right? You are
Mhm.
still in the physical world. Let's say, for example, take a concrete example, right? Take take a warehouse, take a logistics order fulfillment process, right, at the various different companies out there. So think about a situation where kind of the order picker, so the frontline worker, actually, puts on glasses, and obviously that person is still in the warehouse and is still supposed to, fulfill the different orders. But now, thanks to the smart glasses and thanks to extended reality and mixed reality type of technology, additional information, digital information, gets blended into reality, thereby basically making the order fulfiller, so to speak, quote unquote, a better person, right? Because um, they get instructions, what is actually what they are supposed to pick, what is the quantity, all those things. But all those digital information, they don't need to read from a piece of paper or something anymore, but it gets truly blended into the reality. And sometimes I think for those people that haven't experienced it by now already, wearing, for example, a Microsoft HoloLens device or whatsoever is out there, I think you can combine that or compare that with a heads up display in cars, right?
Yeah.
Where it's the same experience. You could even there say this is also part of the industrial metaverse, because obviously you're still driving the car, but digital information gets blended into your field of view so that you can become a better driver, if you will, right?
Hendrik, I can see you have a HoloLens behind you. And my other question is related to that and the use case that you said. See, I, as a person personally, I cannot use a VR headset for more than a certain amount of time. And it, it makes me a little bit nauseous. And rest of my day is not going to be great if I use it for an extended period of time. So do you think, uh, you know, um a VR headset or a HoloLens kind of a device that you wear for an office duration, that's at least 8 hours, or let's say 6 hours, is that the practical solution of entering the metaverse, or will we have to think about something that is, at this moment, something we really don't, we're not sure about, but there is maybe a solution out there which is much more adaptable to work?
That's actually a good question. So I think it's both, to be honest. So first, speak about the 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 mixed reality headset, like a Microsoft Hololens, like the one that is behind me. Those devices you would probably be able to wear for an extended period of time. Not necessarily you would wear that, let's say, for an 8 hour shift long, right? Various different reasons, including weight and form factor, I would say. However, for example, in training exercises, in product development exercises, where it's about, let's say, an hour or two that you spend in this mixed reality world, this is already there today, right? And in fact, training is a big area for us at TeamViewer. So where we leverage those type of technology, because it gets you the rich digital information. It gets you holograms, 3D animations, all that stuff that people can easily understand while training or learning. There is tremendous value in that technology. Now, that being said, what about 8 hour shift long use of something that is called still industrial metaverse? So there is other smart glass hardware out there today that is, for example, rather a monocular version, right? Whereas, mixed reality typically is binocular, there is monocular versions. And with that monocular versions, obviously form factors, weight, everything is a completely different story. And those are devices that have been around since 4 or 5 years, that people are wearing 8 hour shifts long without any problem, right? And that is where you want to be as an enterprise, right? Because typically you need tools. so that people can really use that throughout the entire day and not just, let's say, for 2 hours or so. And that is what we call also not necessarily extended reality, but assisted reality. So it's a little bit less rich in terms of the immersion and the experience. However, it still functions like a heads-up display in a car. It gives you super value information so that you can do your job actually better, right? And that can range, for all sorts of scenarios that we're seeing and that we're serving with our TeamViewer products right now. It's really it can be manufacturing, right? How do I assemble certain things? It can be inspection. So once you have something that requires inspection, how can a system, guide you through inspection procedures, maintenance procedures, for example, all the way down to the warehouse shop floor, right, where I was already referring to order fulfillment. Obviously, order pickers doing it 8-hour shifts long, right, not just for 2 hours or so. So, and then obviously, last but not least, not to forget the probably the most prominent use case right now in industrial metaverse, which is remote support, right? It's this you see what I see type of experience, which has tremendous value for a lot of organizations, and which is in fact also something similar to a video conferencing situation. However, you are able, with you see what I see, take kind of the camera into a different perspective so that two people can actually look at the same thing, can enrich the experience with digital data annotations, all these things, which have then by the end of the day the value for the customer, for the user. So both is
Are there
possible. I think that's what I'm saying, right? So it really depends on the use case, right? Some headsets are better suited for, let's say, rather shorter term use, but eventually get you a super rich experience. Others are really meant to be for the long term use, give you a little bit lesser richness in terms of the experience, but obviously get you tremendous value because you can, have that tool facilitate throughout the entire work shift.
in the near future, are we looking at a scenario where, when we look at a team or we see them virtually lined up, you're also seeing a certain number of users who are almost like the extended office on extended reality, often on many software you will see the kind of device these people are using. You'll see a laptop icon, you will see a mobile icon, and you might see a HoloLens kind of an icon for some users who are going to be in a completely different world, so to say. Is that how you see the near future of this sort of rolling out?
No, I think I'm not only seeing this as the near future. I would argue it is already there, right? Because, like I mentioned, this industrial metaverse thing is nothing for the future. In fact, I think we are doing this for quite some time already, years, doing this. And what you are hitting on is really, the seamless integration, let's say, of a multitude of different devices, for example, right? Because you referred to desktop, mobile, and then eventually, AR, metaverse, mixed reality type of things. That is, for example, what we're doing at TeamViewer, right? Because we know there are certain use cases where, for example, the true metaverse is what you want, right? And what you need. But there is certainly also some significant value in mobile type of experiences. So, and in fact, it's actually also, from my perspective, the way towards the true metaverse is going to be first being, for example, also device, if not to say paradigm agnostic, right? So there is, from my perspective, as is today, no true need for 100% only industrial metaverse. You can still have a blend of industrial metaverse plus, let's say, the what everything that we know already around mobile computing, right? Where there's also tremendous value, and it really depends on the use case. That being said, you know, typically there's even more value if you can deploy something like the industrial metaverse type of technology.
So, as you mentioned, like TeamViewer, for instance, has been using this for some time. If you could explain, how does TeamViewer bring in this experience for the industrial metaverse?
Yeah, I think that is probably also what people are wondering. I mean, why are we at TeamViewer? Because TeamViewer is typically known for everything else but not the metaverse, right? Yet, I would say. However, so what we've done is over the last years, we have significantly invested in, augmented reality, mixed reality type of things, because we truly believe we can make the difference in what we call the industrial metaverse, right? Because there's so much value that TeamViewer, based on top of its core capabilities, can deliver in that space. So over the years, obviously, everyone knows TeamViewer for remote connectivity, remote control capabilities, which are typically used for, let's say, all sorts of IT support use cases, right, and remote support use cases. What we have now as TeamViewer really literally expanded into the augmented reality space because we also see that there is convergence on the technology level. So there is convergence, for example, between the IT world, which is kind of you could call the heritage of TeamViewer, and what we call the OT world, which is more operational type of equipment, which is, with things like Industry 4.0 happening, with things like smart homes, right? The reality is the world is getting smarter and smarter every day, right? Device proliferation is a fact, right? And what we're doing at TeamViewer and why we believe the metaverse is so important also for us is that these two elements, IT and OT, are converging right now, right? So what we will do is, and what we're doing and offering already today our customers is really an end-to-end experience along the entire value chain, which means no matter whether you are dealing with IT devices or you're dealing with OT devices, we have the tools at hand for you that help you. But as we go more on, the devices that are ubiquitous, that are all over the place, but that are not necessarily a traditional computer, but embedded into reality. Think about a smart oven. Think about, robots, machines. The value of augmented reality is tremendous, right? Because there you benefit from an, let's say, outside in perspective on certain things because you are actually in reality and you're not sitting in front of a computer anymore. So, and we still want to, give our IT support, or let's say support capabilities to just more people, right? And therefore we have expanded from, let's say, giving the TeamViewer technology, which is super well known, giving it to desk workers. We're now also giving it to deskless workers. And that's kind of how we see also the metaverse trend kind of evolving over time, right? Like we said just in the beginning, eventually you could argue the type of video conferencing is eventually the beginning, but the true metaverse future is gonna be outside of the computer in reality, right? And how do you leverage that technology?
It is very fascinating. This is something that I know I hadn't really thought about, like going beyond the desk. But when you go beyond the desk, you're also getting into an area where which is maybe beyond the control of your clients, right? Because when you are in a desk environment, you are in an IT managed environment. The devices are what you know. But when you go into a desktop less environment, the person using it might be showing you stuff on a smartphone. So how do you control that? Is that end to end? Is there an end to end solution that you are thinking of?
Yeah, so I mean, it's actually a good question, right? So TeamViewer, for example, has a suite of products which we call TeamViewer Frontline, right? And that suite of products is actually providing specific solution for various different value chain elements. For example, I already touched on the logistics piece, right? Supply chain solutions, really. How do you leverage metaverse type of technology so that kind of your workforce in the supply chain can do better? That's one area, right? The other area is really in the manufacturing space, right? Solutions that we provide is that really take into account, okay, there is an increased complexity on average, I would argue, in terms of manufacturing processes because the capabilities are just better today, right? So there we have dedicated solutions that you can use to facilitate your manufacturing processes. The third area is really around, inspection type of scenarios, right? If you have um, goods being manufactured, produced, obviously all of a sudden they enter into a life cycle, and then they need service, right? And then also, how do you facilitate that with metaverse technology? That is the third area where we are providing really dedicated solutions. You could even argue sometimes out of the box. You can just use them and deploy them in your environment. And then the fourth area is really around the "you see what I see" remote support use case, where it's kind of really about taking the camera, putting it kind of in a first person view, and then leveraging augmented reality technology, be it on smartphones, for example. But obviously, even more valuable would be with smart glasses, because then your hands are free and then you can really collaborate on certain things and challenges. So that's what we're bringing to the table there, and that's what you could even sometimes think about, like something similar to a Microsoft Office for the desk worker.
Yeah.
But what we bring to the table is really the kind of the version of that, which is meant to be for the deskless frontline workers, right? So, and it has kind of the same idea in the background.
Thanks a lot, Hendrik, for giving us this fascinating insight into the metaverse or the industrial metaverse. And I'm sure we'll all have people helping us out with HoloLenses and trying to fix things not just on your desktop. Thanks for being on the show, Hendrik.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thank you for being on the show, and we'll be back again next week with another wonderful guest and a lot of insight and a lot of conversations. You're listening to Our Own Devices with Nandagopal Rajan. We are everywhere you listen to your podcast.